So, very good morning, everybody, and welcome to this. I think I've lost track, but maybe it's the fifth teaching in this series on voidness of everything and compassion for everyone, and where we're starting with a brief but organized look at voidness, sunyata. So anyway, the whole reason we're doing this is because we want to help others more. And in order to help them, we want to free our mind, liberate our mind, and make our minds wise and loving and caring, rich in every possible positive, helpful quality, so all of that together, everything perfect, as best as it can be, we call Buddha. So because we are wanting to become Buddhas, we're what they call bodhisattvas. And so bodhisattvas have a way of doing things. We start well, and we carry on well, and we finish well. And the way we start well is with a very precious, very important moment of motivation. Now, motive means driving force. And it's like when they send, these days, rockets up there to space stations or far away. You need a first stage which is packed with fuel, explosive, and if that works, then all the rest is going in the right direction. And it takes much less energy. It's on the right track. It's got away from the gravity, the pull, the downward pull of the earth. So we have the pull of habit. It's got a fancy name, samsara, but generally it means not so helpful habits that either take us to the wrong place or they just waste our time. Our very, very precious time here on earth. So in order to break free, then we spend these few moments of prayer, reflection, not just for the sake of those few moments, but with the intention of having a certain precious, loving, caring feeling within us all the way through the talk, so that we're listening with the right heart, the right motivation, the best ears. So let's do those prayers. We take refuge in the Buddha, in the Dharma, and in the community of most noble minds. From this moment on until we reach the very heart of enlightenment. Through our practice of generosity and all six transcendent virtues, may we reach total awakening and every enlightened quality to be able to truly help sentient beings so lost in samsara. May each and every one of those beings be well. May they live long, be healthy, be well provided for, have good friends. May they find respect and live in places of peace and plenty. Most of all, may they practice Dharma. May they create the causes for these good circumstances to be their wealth in future lives. May they be free from suffering and from creating causes of future suffering. May they discover the natural and sacred well-being totally beyond suffering and attain the great equanimity that's free of closeness or distance from anyone. Deyata Shame Shamawati Shameta Shatru Om Korimar Karota Keorita Jovati Oloyane Beshudane Male Malapanaye Kukure Kakagrase Grasana Omukim Paramuki Amuki Sham Dawane Savagraha Bandanane Kritva Sava Bhava Pravadina Vimukta Marabhasha Savitva Buddha Mudra Anugatita Sava Mare Butsarita Parishude Biga Shantu Sava Marakama. Glorious Guru, source of all blessing, ever present above our heads on lotus and moon seat, through your immense kindness, ever sustain us, that the accomplishments of body, speech, and mind flow from you, and we are one. So 2 weeks ago, we were exploring the Cittamatra tradition, and we're going through these 4 or 5, depending how you look at it, main stages of development of Buddhist thinking, you could say, but the thinking is a result of understanding. You can't think and write until you've understood something. So we're looking at Buddhist understanding, and it's very helpful to realize that Buddhist understanding evolved. It wasn't all there from the beginning. Of course, the Buddha taught everything, but if you've ever been around a great teacher, which I have been fortunate enough to have done quite a lot in my life, you appreciate who they are, and you see the various people who come to them, who are around them, in their monasteries, in the centers they go to. Nobody's up to their level, and everybody's getting what they're getting, different bits for different people, and they're growing. It makes sense to them when they receive it, they work with it, they get more teachings, their understanding gets deeper. So Buddha taught non-stop, 45 years, a lot of wonderful people, but they didn't all become Buddha like him and pass it on perfectly straight away. It didn't work like that. How could it? How could it? Took Buddha so long to get where he got. Give people a few years and expect them to equal him. And they weren't even intending to do that, many of them. He was showing them how to free our mind, to become arhat. That's the mind that's free forever from the darkness, the ignorance, the problems, most of it. No more suffering ever. That's what they were aiming for. Many of them achieved that. Many of them, hundreds and hundreds. But they did not become Buddha. To become Buddha takes so much more. It's beyond freedom from our own story. It's to be totally equipped with all the tools you need to help anyone, given the limits of how much people can be helped. Even if we had 20,000 Buddhas in this world just now, they couldn't help everybody, because not everybody's interested. And even those who are interested, like us, we've all got personal agendas and lives and so on. So we kind of balance, we have so much Buddhism, so much rest of life. It's a balance. So what Buddha taught so beautifully, much of it was conserved, much of it, not all of it, much of it. And as time went by, people gradually got it. I mean, we see this in science. For instance, famous cliche, but nevertheless brilliant scientist Einstein. We're still proving things that he got, and he said, and he calculated, the maths are there. But now with astrophysics and the actual measurements they can make and the black holes and all this, everything they're doing, you can see just how much he got right. And even if he didn't get it 100% right, you can see that was the basis for them furthering it. But he's long gone. And we're just appreciating more and more the genius. And he himself said, so often the maths and the calculations aren't the reason you come to that conclusion. You kind of get it, and then you have to work out, could that be, or how could that be in the equations. So anyway, it's very important. Now, I say it's very important, but what's really curious and interesting is that our present Karmapa is being very much a Karmapa. Karmapa is a person for the age. And of all the things that he's doing, he's not just carrying on the traditional, how can you say, head of the lineage thing, which would be a full-time, busy job, just doing what all the Karmapas of the past have done in a big organization. He's devoting a lot of time to research of Buddhist history, because he says, and he used 3 different examples in the last couple of months, that if you don't know where you come from, then you're very much in the dark. And this is doubly true for us, because most of us are Westerners coming to something that's been pickled in Tibet for 1,000 years. It's let loose on the world, and we need to know what went on. What went on in the best of things, and what went wrong. Like Charles Dickens, they were the best of times, they were the worst of times. Some things were maintained beautifully, some things got a bit wonky. So this needs to be sorted out. And then these teachings that Tibetans have preserved so respectfully, so beautifully, where did they come from? They came from India, and what was going on there? So Karmapa is not only very interested in this, he's going to the best sources for his research. So it's not just boring history, because when we start, I think I said this in the first talk, when we study these different schools, the reason we're studying is because Khenpo Tsultrim, and based on the first Jamgon Kongtrul's brilliant work, said this is the best way to understand the deepest view. You work up to it step by step through these 4 or 5 main traditions. So it's so that we understand the Buddha's intention, Buddha's message, not so that we're informed about Buddhist history and blah, 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 this school, that school. I don't think any of us here is that interested in it. If you were, you wouldn't be coming to me. You'd be going to somebody who's much better at the blah, blah, blah history. We want to know, we want to study this because there are 2 ways of studying it as a basis for informing our meditation practice. So we're meditators, but who need to get the fuel we're using, the instructions, the practices, the texts, we need to get that straight. Or there are philosophers, and philosophers, they philosophize. And as Patrul Rinpoche says, and maybe it was another one, but he says, how many philosophers lay on their deathbed and regret they spent so much time thinking rather than practicing. So we are studying for practicing, but we need a minimum so we can understand the words. The words are beautiful. And so many people use them without really understanding them. This is the problem. Nice, they're poetic, they're actually poetry. They look good and they feel like beauty, like the union of voidness and clarity. Kind of warms the heart, but what the hell does it mean? When you sit down on your meditation cushion, what's the clarity mean? What's the voidness mean? Now you're going to put them together as a union. Or how are you going to see the one within the other and the other within the other? So we need to know. Now, before we plunge back into the schools, the actual term, what we're looking at, sunyata, voidness, emptiness. I'm smiling because I know I'm going to irritate some people watching this, but anyway. Always means an absence. That's the word. Shunyata. Shunya means empty, nothing there. Doesn't mean something. It means nothing there. So it's always, in the first session of this course, we had the definition of shunyata. Shunyata is the wisdom that knows the difference between what seems to be and what really is. What seems to be the illusion seems it's there, but it's not there. So it's always saying, no. Looks like that, seems like that, but really and really, in reality, and truly, in truth, really and truly, that's not what's going on. The shunyata word is always no, not. Something's not there. Now, even when we get to the end, when we come to the end of the shunyata exploration and we get the Shentong school, it's still the same. It's a different vision. We're saying that nothing exists in its own right, so that something that we're seeing is no, because you can't separate it from everything. Where one thing stops and the rest start, the causes that are making it happen, the light that makes us see, the atmosphere that makes us hear. You can't hear in a vacuum. And so many conditions. You cannot say, that's that. Everything is interconnected. And that interconnection is changing all the time. It's amazing. It's brilliant. So the no is still the meaning of shunyata, which is why we say the union of appearance and emptiness. It's not saying there's nothing at all, like blank. Nothing at all. You can't even imagine that because you're imagining nothing. It's the imagination of nothing. Real nothing is nothing at all. It's not saying that. It's the union, the fusion. It's appearing. It looks like you're you. I look like I've got these people listening to me. That's what I'm looking at. That's what appears, and at the same time, it's not quite what it seems to be. But I want to say that whenever we use the word shunyata, voidness, emptiness, we're talking about what's not there. Okay, so I've said that. Now, in the history, where we are now, in our study of these main schools, is we've transitioned from the Hinayana schools or the Shravaka schools or basic Buddhism that we studied as the Vaibhashika and the Sautrantika. We've transitioned now to the Mahayana schools. And it's important to understand they developed over time. But even, how can you say, the seeds of their development were within the Buddha's time and immediately after the Buddha, when you look at what they call the first council that was held after the Buddha's passing, within a year, more or less, of his passing. Already there were two main areas of Buddhists, two main groups, not schools, but I say amongst the Buddhist community, there were two vibes. Let's use a modern word, two vibes. There were the ones who tended to strictness, asceticism, reclusion, and they've got the rule book, right? So this is what Buddha said, this is what we do. You're not doing it correctly, then 100%, that kind of thing. Embodied in Mahakashyapa, who actually organized the first council. The other one, which was embodied in other great followers of the Buddha, but unfortunately, 6 months before Buddha passed, Shariputra and Moggallana, his two main disciples, they passed. So they weren't around after the Buddha was gone to take part in the debriefing, let's say. So embodied in Asanga, Ananda, Buddha's cousin, who was with him the longest during his life. And that represented a much more, you might say, broad-minded and loving, caring. I mean, I'm sure Mahakashyapa was loving and caring, but he really liked whenever he could to go off into his cave and sit. He was a loner, he was an ascetic. Ananda was all the time looking after his Dharma brothers and sisters, caring for them, sorting out problems in the community. Very motherly, caring. And he actually said, Buddha himself said, after I'm gone, you don't need to observe all of the rules that have been established. He said you need to keep the essential ones, the main ones. So it's like the spirit, not the letter of the rules. So anyway, it's a long story. But when we go back already to the Buddha's own time and his community, and then what happened afterwards when Mahakashyapa, who was made his successor by the Buddha, not his successor, but the one in charge of the Sangha, he organized it so the first council kept all the rules and emphasized the strict or ascetic side. But in there we have the beginnings of the Mahayana. And then in all the scriptures that were kept, not scriptures, they weren't written down, but the teachings of Buddha that were kept in the first few centuries, then there were only some that were preserved in what we call the Tripitaka, and others became the Mahayana canon, which weren't accepted by the others. But anyway, Mahayana grew slowly, and as people were working out what was the Buddha's message, they were also working out, well, look, he taught us all how to be free from our history, from our emotions, from the more limited parts of our mind. But he wasn't teaching everyone how to become like him. And it's very interesting because they all called him the Bodhisattva, all of them. But so then gradually thinking, but how can we become like Buddha? And they started looking more into his teachings and what he taught. And then the idea of what a bodhisattva is emerged. Now we have to take that into account, the slow time it took in history. And then one of the reasons for that, when you look back, is that India was so big, India where Buddhism developed, travel was so slow, and ideas traveled slowly. They could only travel with people, they could only travel with very wonderful people who could present them. So we see in different parts of India, Buddhist India, some schools of thought really flourishing, and in other parts, other schools really flourishing. And we had this, as centuries went by, up in Kashmir and Gandhara, also in central India as well. It's called Magadha at the time. The Mahayana is becoming very strong. So anyway, I wanted to say that as a background about the sunyata always is pointing out what's not, the illusion, or it's always pointing at what's not. Let's keep it like that. And then how these schools developed. Now, let's look at this one. Can you wave a hand if you can see it? Thank you very much. There we are. So this is a timeline that I sent out to you of, now the purple one up at the top line, it shows the time over which this Cittamatra school developed. It's also called Yogacharya. We'll come back to that later. It's also called Vijnavadin. We'll come back to that later too. So you can see it's from 4th century through to 8th century. Its main thinkers who presented it, worked on the ideas, presented it even better, or gave alternative interpretations. Down the bottom, in the green bar, you see the middle way, the Madhyamaka schools, and how they sort of started with Nagarjuna, so 2nd century, and then through his disciple Ayadeva, and then over a long period of time, up to the 11th century, the thinking is still being fine-tuned, but with some big names. So the big names of the middle way, when we come to them, will be Buddha Palita and, I've got a J too many, Bhava Viveka. It's not BHJ, it's BH. Spelling mistake there, Bhava Viveka. So, and then later on, Chandrakirti. I want to emphasize, look how long that is. 900 years. So it's not as though there was boof one school and boof another school, and then they have differences of opinion. All of these are happening gently, slowly, in different places, and in some places meeting up, sharing ideas, debating ideas, disagreeing. But it seems that in India, all these people were very happy to coexist. Your roommate could be a Cittamatra and you could be a Madhyamaka, and you wouldn't be fighting all the time. You'd just be respectful of each other's views. Now, in between those two, you can see in sort of pale pink, very interesting one, which is Yogacharya Madhyamaka, which is a kind of fusion of mind only and middle way. That's a very interesting one, and it's quite relevant because one of its main proponents was Santarakshita and his disciples. And of course it was him who first took Buddhist philosophy to Tibet in a big way. With King Trison Detsen, he brought Guru Rinpoche, who had the muscle to bring Dharma to Tibet. They tried before, but it didn't work. He had the spiritual power, Guru Rinpoche. But for the actual Dharma teachings, they brought one of India's best scholars, Santarakshita, and he was a Yogacharya Madhyamaka fusion person. So this first injection of Mahayana teachings into Tibet came from that fusion. And then later on, you see if you look at the right-hand side of the diagram, in the 12th century, Dhamma disappeared from India. And after that, it only existed in exile in all the countries it went to, in Sri Lanka, in China, in Tibet, lots of countries. But it stopped in India. So the blue lines are just to show that what was in Tibet came from Indian thinking. That's all. The teachings survived in Tibet. And what I didn't put on this diagram is in the 11th and 12th centuries, a huge transfusion, excuse me, from India to Tibet through people like Mapa the translator and Atisha and so on. Okay, let's stop that one. So we're there. Now, let's go back to our step-by-step journey through the schools. And we're with Cittamatra, which mind only, Chitta, mind, Matra, only or merely or simply mind, from a quotation of the Buddha, that all is simply mind. It's also known as Yogacharya. Charya means like the vehicle, the way of the yogis, yoga, the way of yogis. So yogis doesn't necessarily mean people doing physical exercises, although they do. It means yoga, yuk, is the Sanskrit root is yuk. And we still have that word in English as yoke for joining two cattle or two horses to pull something. We talk about a yoke because it joins. So yuk means to join. It means fusion. And it means fusion with the truth. In other religions, fusion with God. But it is joining one's mind, applying one's spirit to what is vast, eternal, depending how you define it. That's the meaning of yoga. So this is very interesting because the Yogacharya view, all is mind, is very closely connected to practice. And you may have found in your own practice, I certainly find with the people I teach, is it's only when people are really practicing, doing the meditations, doing the sadhanas, whatever they're doing, but they're really practicing. By really practicing, I mean using their practice as a path, not a daily habit, not where you repeat the same thing and stay in the same place year after year, but where your practice is a path, where you are growing through it, is getting deeper and deeper. You're using it that way, it's happening that way. What I find is it's only when people are practicing that then they have experiences that bring to life these words that we find in the various philosophy. Right? All is mind. You show that to some people and they just look at you as though you're crazy. We live in this vast world full of 8 billion other humans is so big. You get to know 2 or 3 other humans well, and you realize they're really different. 8 billion people, that's like a vastness of humanity. You can't take it in. I spent, 40, 50 years of my life with Tibetans. I still don't really understand them. They are fundamentally different. Their approach to life, the way they think. I mean, I get it from the outside, so many things. But still, I can say, it's foreign. I'm not fused with it. I know how to handle it. I know how to be with them, do all the gestures and all the rest of it, but it's still a bit alien. So you tell people all is mind. First of all, they think you're telling them all is your mind, which is not what Cittamatra means. That would be ridiculous. When I think of some of the more outrageous political leaders on our planet, my mind never created those. No way. I have zero responsibility there. And all the people doing the most wretched and horrible things. And I can't take credit for the people doing the wonderful things either. I wish I could. So when it says all is mind, it doesn't say all is your mind. It says all is mind. It stops there. The yours, the mine. Buddha dealt with that in basic Buddhism. It's an illusion. It's not what it seems. There seems to be. There's the illusion where we're so separate. It's an illusion. So all is mind. But you tell that to some people and it just seems outrageous. But then you talk with people who really meditate and practice. How could it be anything else? And people, even not just who practice, but even those who bother to think enough, philosophers, when they really start thinking, how could it be? And then in Western philosophy too, it's not quite the same, but there are what were called the idealists. It's idealists rather than ideal. It's not people with ideals. It's people who realize everything is ideas. There is no more than ideas, ideation. And it's very interesting because in idea you've got ID, which is id, which is the Latin for self. And these days ID is, it's your ID. Show me your ID, who are you? So ideas. We had idealists amongst the philosophers, but more interestingly, as I keep coming back to, in modern physics, modern science, they had no choice but to come to this conclusion that all is mind, not through philosophy, but realizing what are we doing when we measure? And what is it that we're measuring? We're measuring life as it appears to us in our very limited cognitive capacity, only picking up one part of the electromagnetic spectrum and so on and so on. We are measuring what appears to us with instruments created by us, making information that we process with our own paradigms that we created. They realize this whole thing is not measuring the universe. It's very different. It's creating a language of communication about human experience. This is science. It's not philosophy. It's science. Science. So Cittamatrins say mind only, but they're also the Yogacarya, because the Yogacarya movement in India, which became with time inseparable from Cittamatran, was the way the meditators' deep experience found it to be. Yogacaryas. They're also called Vijnavadins, because Vijna means Vijnana, consciousness. So everything is consciousness. Vadin means proponents of. consciousness. Everything's consciousness. Now, this mind only is very pragmatic. So I want to repeat something I've said, but it's so important, and I want to make sure you not only get it, but you work with it, which is to sort out something that's totally mixed up just now. It's like when you've got two balls of wool that have been mixed up. Red threads and blue threads, and it's all mangled up. And you separate them and untangle them till in the end, red is red, blue is blue. You've got two separate skeins. So there's what we directly experience in each moment. And it goes, and it's a new moment. Our real experience. And how the other thing, the other ball of wool, is how we explain it, how we rationalize it, and the blah, blah, blah that goes on in our heads to tell us what's happening to us all the time. It's like, I always feel embarrassed. I share the same examples all the time, but it's the results of my life and my experience. Horse race commentators. You've got on TV, right? So you see the horses, and they sort of like this along the racetrack with the jockeys on the back going sort of like this, and if you've got the sound on, then you hear this guy almost having a heart attack, especially when they get near the end. And this one's coming out on the right, and this one's on the left, and this one is coming out faster. Will he take me over there? Like this. And then there's this kind of war. And that was it. He won it by half a nose and like this. So it's really funny if you watch a horse race and you gradually turn the sound down and you just look. It's really boring. It's kind of boom, like this. You know, one moves up and one. You turn up the sound and you've got this kind of neurotic telling you what you can see anyway. When you look at, what's this guy doing who's getting so woof? He's telling me what I'm seeing with my own eyes because we've got TV now. These people came from the radio when people couldn't see it. And so then bring some excitement. But once we had TV, you can see it, but somehow they still got a job, telling you what you can see right in front of you. So we've got part of our mind which is telling us the story of us, the story of everything, the story of the people we know and love and hate or whatever. We've got that whole narrative. And in particular, with these things of philosophy, we have a narrative. We inherited a narrative from our upbringing, science, Western culture, and so on. We brought that to another area, Buddhist thinking, and we're juggling with all of that. But it is a narrative. If you forget about the narrative, the mind only, Cittamatra, Yogacarya view is incredibly useful and pragmatic, because in each moment of now, the other, out there, seemingly out there, other people, life, this planet, the environment, everything, politics, you're dealing with whatever you know of it in your mind. As simple as that. What you're experiencing is what's happening in your mind. I mean, that's so obvious you don't get it. What you're experiencing is happening. If it's not happening in your mind, you don't experience it. You don't know about it. It's not part. So then all the rest is rationalization. When you talk about all is mind, people say, but yes, there must be something there, blah, 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 blah. All that's rationalization. We're not talking about that. There must be, or how could it work otherwise? Not saying that's not valid. It's good to explore that. But in actual terms of what's interesting for us, how can we get free? How can we become Buddha? Is working with our own mind. Not just our own mind, me in here, but my experience of other people, what they did to me, what they did with me, what this world around me has inputted into my experience. What is my experience of it right now? The man next door, the birds in my garden. It's only what's happened in our mind that we can work with and that affects us, that made us angry, that made us kind. Only the stuff in our mind. The rest is theoretical. It's a huge thing to understand. And it's so real. And it's so pragmatic, it's so practical. The rest is for philosophers, for thinkers. Yes, but how does that work? There must be all of that. Endless ideas, endless. But in terms of Yogacharya, working with our mind to become free, to become like Buddha, then all we've got is our mind and its experience. That's all. So, mind only. Very, very practical approach. And that's why what we saw last time in mind only, the 8 consciousnesses, where we add to the standard 6 the corrupting consciousness and universal basis consciousness or storehouse consciousness. Very wonderful way of working with everything that occurs in our mind and understanding how it occurs through the power of karma, the power of consciousness to store memories, impressions, and then at a later date to throw them up on our field of awareness. So the 8 consciousnesses that we looked at last time, and then the 3 dimensions of each moment. If you remember those, the conditioned that comes through past karma, that's what's on screen. The purely imagined, which is how we relate to it, what we project onto it. And then the true nature of mind, Buddha nature of mind. Buddhists say the true nature of mind for all Cittamatrans. As we get towards the end of the Cittamatran, maybe not towards the end, but as time went by, there's more emphasis, let's say, on not just the nature of mind, but the Buddha nature of mind. Not just its sunyata qualities of emptiness, but its fullness of all the Buddha qualities. Time for 2 things. A sip of coffee and examples. Very poignant examples. I've known a few Tibetans who were a long time in prison, and I've known of others, but one I knew very, very well, Khenpo Tsultrim. 18 years in prison in Tibet because he was a Khenpo, because he was the abbot of a monastery, and very tough. And he told me about him and other people who were in there, who, how can you say, seen from the outside, were leading a horrible life. life. You can imagine, maybe you know what it was like. People died, people were killed, and people committed suicide, other people survived. But some people, lamas mainly, or yogis, made it into the most exceptional time of their life. Because although they were in exactly the same circumstances as everyone else, very tough, they saw this as now everything's been stripped down. There's just me, my mind, and my Buddhist practice. Can I be kind and compassionate no matter what? Can you maintain a loving, kind, forgiving heart when you're being tortured or hurt? And so on. They said, this now, practicing Buddhism in a monastery where you're fed every day, you've got a bed to sleep on, you can go out and walk, you've got a lot of freedom, life's very organized. Okay, it's wonderful, it's Dharma. But now, this is the best opportunity for real Dharma to come out. This is the acid test of your Buddhism. And so they came out of the prison better than they went in. Because what was manifesting, the people, the jailers, the prison, the terrible food, all of that was the same as for others. But they took everything as a blessing. And it made their mind become free from so much, especially anger, resent, self-pity, all those kind of things we all suffer from. And it developed loving kindness and compassion in all circumstances, all day long. They changed their own minds. So this, when we say Yogacharya, for me it's a very moving word, because it means when we are really yogis, we realize that changing our mind changes everything and everyone as well. Everything and everyone. Now, a few more important things about Cittamatra I need to tell you when we look at sort of the big deals. What do they do? What do they go on about? If you have to live with a Cittamatra, what they're going to be going on about all the time? What's their story? One thing they talk about is called Svavidya, or Rarik in Tibetan, and it is, people translate this differently. If you translate it very simply, it means self-knowing. Self-knowing. Autocognizant is a sort of posher way of saying the same thing. Self-knowing, but it means this: at the same time, in each living moment that we are aware, we also know we're aware. And it's a bit like these days, we can have a very good example, the difference between a video camera that's got a screen and a video camera that's got a screen and that's recording. So if it's just got the screen, then it goes by and it's gone forever. Each moment, like CCTV cameras with somebody who's in a supermarket or a big shopping complex, somebody's got about 10, 12 screens where they're checking for thieves, basically. If it's not recorded, then it comes and goes and it's gone forever. If it is recorded, it still comes and goes on screen, but there's a trace, there's a recording. So they say, we remember what happened. So there must be this faculty of mind that is not just experiencing, but that knows it's experiencing, doesn't quite capture it, but it's it's like a storage facility. And they say, because they talk about the eighth consciousness, the eighth storehouse consciousness. So how does karma work? If you hit somebody, it's not just in that second you hit them and it's gone, disappeared in the rest of the cosmos forever. Is that you hit them, but your consciousness knows you hit them, and it's kept a trace. And if you did it with certain circumstances, you did it on purpose, you blah, 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 6 circumstances, then that makes a karmic imprint in your consciousness, like recording on a cassette. And later on, when they've got the triggering circumstances, your karma ripens, we express it like that, and the universe does back to you something like what you did to the universe, if we put it in modern terms. So they say there has to be this knowing what's going on, not just aware, but knowing, for the eighth consciousness to store the karma in the way it does, in the way it so obviously does. And we see this in one lifetime with trauma or with memories. You experience something, it's gone. Maybe you've forgotten it completely, but then later on in life, there's a trigger, like a photograph, and all of a sudden the feelings come back. It can even bring tears to the eyes or wrath to the mind when you see the photo. This ability to imprint, to store an imprint, and then later on for that to be triggered and to make you experience in a certain way. So this svavidya, rangrik, autocognizance is quite a big deal for them. Now, if you are a bit more interested in this stuff, and not just doing it because this is the current course, but this svavidya, rangrik, is going to come back in Mahamudra teachings with a different meaning. So you need to know there's the rangrik, the self-knowing of the Cittamatrans, which is where consciousness has this knowing facility. Consciousness, our stream of consciousness, as opposed to the self-knowing of Buddha mind. Same term, self-knowing, rangrik, svavidya, but totally different, totally different. Our stream of consciousness, samsaric consciousness, with this self-knowing capacity is one thing, but when you're in Buddha mind meditation, there is no you left. There is no you knowing Buddha. So the way it's expressed is Buddha mind knows itself. When we are in deep samadhi, deep absorption, then our consciousness stream shuts up for a moment. Buddha mind is there. It knows what it is. It knows itself. It's not known by other. Very important, not only in our deeper Buddhist philosophy, but in Sufism and other things too, other deep aspects of other faiths. So this rangrik, self-knowing, is a big thing for the Vijnavadins or the Cittamatrans. And now I need to share a screen again. Okay. First we're back here. Okay. Okay, another diagram. Okay, good. Hand wave, good. Thank you. So We've been looking generally at Cittamatra. Now we need to see, as the centuries went by, what schools developed. Two main ones, translated these days as true aspectarians and false aspectarians. I'm sure you've been looking at the diagram since I sent it out a few days ago. Funny words, but aspect means the object, what seems to be the object of our awareness, the other. I am aware of a thing, a person, a sight, a sound, the object of consciousness, the objects of consciousness. So that's the aspect, because the other aspect is the observer, the subject. So some say, they all say, well, everything's mind, but some say that what seems to be the world we experience, the objects we experience, are real. They are reality, they're true. And others say, no, they are false. So what appears as external is false, or what appears as external, we're not saying it is external, what appears in our mind as external, it appears in our mind, but it's false or it's true. Now, around this area of thinking, and I hope it's not, I'm assuming you're absorbing what I'm saying as we go along, but I know from my own time of absorbing, it takes a while. But if you go to the three aspects of reality, I suppose I better keep the diagram on the screen. Three aspects of reality. What's produced by karma, that's producing the movie that's on screen. What's called the imagined or the projected is how we relate to it, how we interpret it, the story we tell ourselves about it. That's number two. Number three is the true nature of mind, the changeless, true nature of mind. Changeless, nothing to do with these changing stories. The true Buddha nature of mind, we can say as well. So what comes on screen through our history, our karma, how we relate to it now, and the true nature of this mind, which has the on-screen and which has the me relating to it. So there are different ways of looking at this. What comes on screen through past karma can be seen as ultimately true. Now remember, we're talking about yogis here. Yogis, we're living in the moment. There's only this moment. So what's on screen is true. And I'm sure you've seen this comes up in Zen beautifully and many other ways where, a butterfly passes. You get these little 3-4 line poems. Something, something, the wind blows, a butterfly passes. Ah, Zen. And that was the moment. That was all there was in that moment. Totally butterfly, 100% butterfly reality. And the meditator was there. What messes it up is the imagined, projected part, where your mind is going, butterfly, samsaric butterfly, nirvana butterfly, I'm having a vivid experience, all the blah, blah, blah of the mind, or whatever it's saying. The interpreting mind. the narrative, the explaining, the storytelling mind. So if we take away the storytelling mind, we're not involved with that. That's not dominating it. And there's only what comes on screen through your karma. That is the ultimate truth of this moment. Not the projections. So, like I say, this is so true if you practice meditation. And sometimes it's very vivid with another person. All of a sudden you see them with fresh eyes and you realize how you've been projecting on them like mad. Every second you've been seeing them. And all of a sudden, sometimes when couples have rows, they say, "You've never seen me. You never really seen me for what I am. You don't know me for what I am." So anyway, that's one way of seeing it, in which case, number 3, the true nature, sunyata, is what sees through the illusion of the projection. The wisdom that sees through the illusion of the projection. So either the blah, blah, blah mind is there, but it's got no power because you're seeing through it, through the power of shunyata, or it's not there at all through the power of meditation. But anyway, there's that kind of interpretation of the 3 levels of reality. So that's when what appears is true. When what appears is false, then both the karmic on-screen reality of this moment, the first nature, the dependent nature, and any projections about it, both of those are illusions. And there is only the Buddha nature of mind that is true. Now, that's the best I can do just now. I'll come back to that in a second because I want to get the diagram off the screen. So anyway, got to finish the diagram, right? So amongst those who think, okay, perceived reality is true, there are 3 ways of analyzing that, let's say. One is called perceptual parity, which means just now if you look and you see a butterfly, a frog, a tree, well, that'll do, but lots of other things too, all at the same time, there must be as many object sides of mind as subject sides. Let's make it easier. If you're looking at something and you're listening, like you're at a concert, you're watching the musicians and you're listening to them at the same time, right? You've got a sound input, you've got a visual input at the same time. So your mind has got a listening part and a seeing part. Maybe you've got an itchy foot at the same time, so you've got a feeling part as well. And the restaurant next door to the concert is cooking curry, so you can smell curry. So you've got a 4th part, and so on. If you are perceiving, then something has to be perceiving that. So there will be as many parts of your perceiving mind in that moment as there are parts perceived. The second one are called half-eggists. Nice name, lightens up the thing a bit, less posh than perceptual parity. So this is like one egg that's cut exactly in 2, so that there is just the present moment with a seeming object side, subject side. Simple as that. Whether there's a butterfly, a banana, and goodness knows what, that's the object for this moment, and the subject is our perceiving mind. There's a third school, non-dual diversity, which says, but no, anyway, this illusion of duality is wrong. There isn't duality. So there is just, in this moment, diversity. Not two halves, not two multiple halves, no two sides, no duality, just diversity in this moment. So that's just to go through. Now, like I say, this is over centuries, it's wonderful thinkers, it's not nearly so simple as I've said, and there's no way that Ken Holmes can make all of this clear to you in a few minutes of a Saturday morning lecture. We're not doing that. I don't expect you to understand. I don't understand. What we're doing, we're just looking at the schools so that we have an aerial view of what went on in the mind-only school. Now we're almost finished for today, but let's ease ourselves into now the next, which for us is the third or the fourth school. If we put Sautantrika and Vaibhashika together as the basic vehicle Hinayana, then it's our third school. If we separate them, then it's our fourth school. And this is middle way. Now, middle way, if you look at the diagram I showed you earlier, just in those bars showing the main thinkers and writers about them, then it started earlier than the Cittamatras. But really all of these schools started from Buddha's time onward. It's just that those writers really firmed them up. When we did our course on Prajnaparamita, you remember Nagarjuna didn't introduce Prajnaparamita. He came for almost 100 years after the first Prajnaparamita text. He really wrote about it beautifully, bird's eye view, summary, brilliant mind for the Prajnaparamita scriptures. So the Tibetan simplified version of Prajnaparamita, that Nagarjuna went to the Naga world and got those texts and brought them to our earth, to our planet, that it kind of started with him, is a very nice story. But historically doesn't hold up. What he did do, once the Prajnaparamita scriptures, 8,000 verses, 20,000 verses, once they were there, he really very clearly presented their meaning in his main texts. But that meaning had been there ever since Buddha. It's just now it becomes formulated and they become a band of people who really follow that view, and it becomes more and more as the centuries go by, a school. And we'll see how Nagarjuna wrote and taught, his disciple Ayadeva carried on his line, but then as time went by, some people thinking about Nagarjuna's thinking, the thinking gets, but and this and like this, very valid. And they start exploring what did he really mean. So we'll have two main trends of Madhyamaka, but let's start by looking at the name itself. Madhya simply means middle. Madhya means middle. And Maka means path, way. Still now in India, you go so many places, the name of a street is something Marg, M-A-R-G. Marga means path or way. So it's the middle way. Now for the basic Buddhism, for the Shravakas, Hinayana, the middle way, when they think of middle way, it is not falling into one of two extremes. One extreme is hedonism, which is beautiful in French. L'art de vivre, the art of living. Living, you eat the best, delicious, and you wear the best, and you go to the nice. You only live once, and so enjoy it, milk it to the full. That kind of idea, hedonism, and that's one extreme. The other extreme is asceticism, where you just cut off everything. So in the life of Buddha, we see the first 30 years or so, 29 years, he has the best of everything. He is the best of everything in worldly terms. Wealth, beauty, power, education. He had the mind better than his teachers when it came to astronomy and mathematics, that kind of thing, languages. So he was the best of the best, and he had the best of the best. He had what people dream of, whether it be wealth, whether it be his wives, and so on. He had everything like that. And then for 6 years, he practiced a more extreme asceticism than anybody else. So afterwards he could say, neither of these brings liberation from the round of life and death. And you need a middle way, but already the middle doesn't mean half and half. How would you do that? You can't be half a hedonist or half an ascetic. If you think about it, how are you going to do that? You're only going to half enjoy your French fries. Or you're only going to be half ascetic when you've got your beautiful landscape. I'm not going to enjoy this to the full. I'm going to sort of half enjoy the beauty. The middle is not a compromise, it's not a fusion and a blend. It simply says middle, meaning you don't deviate. It's like walking a tightrope. If you're too much to the right, you're going to fall off. Too much to the left, you're going to fall off. How do we stay in the middle where you are safe and you can get across? So it's middle in that sense for the Shravakas. When we come to the middle way Mahayana philosophy, then, and we'll come back next week to Mahayana and its development in terms of voidness and compassion. I need to say more, but just now for the middle way, here it doesn't mean so much avoiding those two extremes. That's obvious, that's in basic Dharma. But it means that one's view, one's understanding, the whole way one approaches life does not fall into either one of two extremes or 4 extremes or 8 extremes. Mainly the 2 and the 4, but the middle way philosophy is really about view, because in Mahayana we want to become like Buddha, not just to get free, not to become arhats, we want to become Buddha. To become Buddha, our wisdom has to be the best. And the best wisdom is the deepest understanding of sunyata, that's how it's defined, which is the voidness of everything, not just ego, not just me, but the voidness of everything. In other words, because we know what voidness or sunyata means, seeing through all the illusions we have, all the projections about anything, anyone, everyone, everything, breaking through all of them, then we have the wisdom that knows everything clearly, and that wisdom will help us, in particular, know other people, how they really are, not how we project onto them, how they are in themselves, so we can help them. So the finest wisdom needs to be free from two main extremes. One is, I think probably the most accurate term in English is Rayism. I think that exists in Rayism, where it means making something of it. And then nihilism, which means making nothing of it. So we have this, what do we have? What have you got? What have you got? You've got your mind. You've got your reality, your experience out there, and your experience inside you, of you. That's what we have. One example of making too much of it, making it, I can't remember to use a very good word, making it too solid, making it too fixed, too real, pinning it down, is to make it God. Everything, there's a God, an all-powerful being. They're doing everything. They're making you, they made your experience with whatever agenda a particular religion says. That's how we explain everything. Why is this happening to me and not to him or her? Why am I my karma? Well, we don't call it karma. Why is this happening to me? Will of God. So we make a something that's not there, or a someone that's not there. Or, these days people use not a personal term like God, but they say life, the universe. The universe is doing this to you so that, no. So the universe is a something. There's a universe out there. And what's the universe interested in me for anyway? The whole blooming universe. And it's bothering to give me experiences. Why? And every other ones of the 8 million beings, humans on this planet, and trillions of insects. What's it up to? So we make something to explain that's not there, or someone. That's going over the top that way. In Mahamudra we use a different term, we say exaggeration. But then the other extreme is there's nothing going on behind the scenes at all. It just happens in life. It just happens. And trying to find an explanation, a deeper meaning, something spiritual, something, this is the most important point, with a moral fiber to it, is pointless. Stuff just is. Full stop. You live, you die, finished. You're born rich, you're born rich. You're born poor, you're born poor. Just the way it is. So that's nihilism, not in as much as saying it's nothing, but there's nothing going on behind the scenes. So with the one, with the exaggeration, or with the Rayism, then you get a morality. There's God, and in the religions of the book, God gives the commandments, gives us the guidelines, morality, and there's right, there's wrong, there's what you can do that takes you to heaven, or what you can do that takes you somewhere else, and so on. There's morality. In nihilism, you pick your own morality. There is no universal morality. And so the middle way, which avoids those two extremes, recognizes the power of karma and the innate quality of action, which are actions, what we do to each other, what we do to bring us happiness or suffering. And what brings happiness is called virtue, and what brings suffering. So it's determined by the isness of what's happening. Not our ideas of a God, or not our ideas that, there's nothing going on behind all of this. Not our ideas, but right. As Buddhists, we should be trying to explore the actual isness of how things happen. It's very scientific in that sense. We're just trying to discover what is really going on. The isness out there, not a projected idea. So the projected ideas that exaggerate or underestimate the power of what goes on, and in particular the power of our actions as conscious beings. That's what we're trying to avoid. So there is morality, there's very deep morality as Buddha taught it, the power of karma, and so on. So those are the two extremes we avoid in our view of things. And then when it's four, and I just mentioned them now because to develop them at length might take us a few years, but we avoid four extremes of thought, which is that things exist, or they don't exist, or they both exist and don't exist at the same time, or something other than existence or non-existence. There is a lot of middle way literature about these four, and we can study them for months, and it's quite fascinating. It's really so much like mathematics. You know, with mathematics, do you remember differentiation and what's the other one that goes in the other direction? Anyway, it's like, so we go down and down and down to tiny moments of time. How could it be that this moment makes the next moment? If something really existed, how would it come into being in the first place? Can something come into being with its own existence? How would that happen? And we look at the process, split second to what wasn't there, and then something is there. I mean, scientists have this big bang, but what went bang? There was nothing before the big bang, so what went bang? Nothing doesn't go bang. So how could anything come into being with its own existence? We explore that. But then you can't say it doesn't exist, because it's happening. We're in a world with bombs, weapons, people, love affairs, flowers, butterflies. You can't say that doesn't exist. You're a mad person if you say that doesn't exist. If you're tricky, you might want to say, yeah, but it's some sort of, it kind of exists and doesn't exist at the same time. Really? So we explore what kind of, who thinks that way. Some people do think that way. They do think that way. With very vivid examples like potting, where you've got a lump of clay and it still remains clay, but it becomes a pot as it spins round and your hands shape it and so on. So the pot does exist, doesn't exist, comes into being. It gets interesting. And then the refutations. And then, no, none of that, something completely different to explain what goes on. Not existing, not existing, not a combination. Beyond those four, there's nothing else to explain reality. Either things exist, or they don't exist, or there's some weird mixture, or it's something else. There can't be anything else. Anything else would be included in number four. So, Nagarjuna, Mayadeva, and then all the following disciples go into that at great length. For instance, if you look at the list on the chart, you see quite a long way on Chandrakirti. He's the latest, the one I put on the line. He is superb at looking at the logic of how something could come into being, based on Nagarjuna's teaching, but he expresses it so well. So when we study texts like Entering the Middle Way, Madhyamaka Avatara text, which is sort of where we start middle way training, then that's looking at how could something come into existence, its own existence. But anyway, today is just to kind of explain the name, middle way. So the middle way is avoiding the two extremes or the four extremes, and sometimes, although it's much less used, 8 extremes. We're just avoiding them. We're not compromising, we're just avoiding. And we'll see how this avoidance from those 4 extremes takes shape in the middle way thinking. And also what we'll see next time, maybe first, is their criticism of Cittamatra. Cittamatra's beautiful. I mean, it's so useful. Can it stand up philosophically to the most intelligent of criticisms? Some would say yes, some would say no. And the Madhyamaka purists would say no. But then we've got the Madhyamaka Cittamatra infusion, which is an interesting animal. And so anyway, we'll go further in this development of thinking. Now, over time, the whole point of this is you apply this to your own, 2 things, your own Dharma practice and meditation experience, but also to life in general, to try and understand what this, like all is mind, means. And then when we look into middle way thinking, what that means. So for today, we've finished. We've got some time for discussion and questions afterwards. May whatever virtue was created by this session contribute to the state of omniscience being attained by the main enemy, our mind's defilements, being completely defeated. Through that, may each and every sentient being become free from the ocean of existence, troubled by its waves of rebirth, aging, sickness, and death. May this precious bodhicitta arise in those in whom it's not arisen. May its development know no setbacks, and may it increase ever more and more. And through this virtue, may we quickly achieve Mahamudra and establish every single sentient being in that same accomplishment. So thank you all for your patience, and goodness knows how it was for you, but I hope some of it somewhere was interesting. Do you have anything you'd like to contribute or question you'd like to ask? And I'm sorry for the background noise. They've been cutting trees next door, and there's one of these huge grinding machines gobbling up branches.
Ken, Kim, I just want to thank you, because I've long come across the term the isness of things, and I never quite got what it was. until now, until your explanation. So thanks ever so much. It's really important, and it's something that I always thought I should know. You know, it's one of those things you think you should know, but I don't quite get it. So thank you. It's just you, really. I think everybody needs just to digest stuff. You've given us so much to think about.
Need
Yeah.
need a strong cup of peppermint to help with the digestion.
And I'm hoping that you will speak to at some point how it is to translate the middle way into everyday life. Your experience with it.
Well, the easiest thing for me, I hope it's not a cop-out, is to give you a very technical answer. And I wish I had more Milarepa songs in my memory that I could just blurt out, but I don't. But I mean, often when you see Milarepa stories, when people ask him about something or to teach, he answers in 4 steps. And they're very famous. Now we're in Vajrayana. We're away from the Indian Mahayana schools. We're in Vajrayana practice. View, meditation, action, and result. So Madhyamaka, middle way, is view. And when we practice Vajrayana, which is what I do, I think most of us here are practicing Vajrayana, then view is very important, if not the most important. So when we practice Vajrayana, that's called Tantra. There are 4 levels of Tantra. The Kriya, Upa Yoga, highest yoga. Many of us are practicing highest yoga Tantra because we're in the Kagyu Nyima traditions. Although not all the time. Some practices like Yumne, some Tara comes more like Kriya Yoga, and it's the way it comes across, but anyway. In highest yoga Tantra, view is everything. It's the basis for all the practice. If you don't have the view, then your practice cannot really work. So we study the view, and depending on which Tantra it is, then we study the Madhyamaka Yogacharya view that goes with it. So that's kind of the background, it's the way we understand reality. So it's a view, and then it's what's called, what did I say earlier? View, practice, conduct, and result. Is that what I said? Yeah. So the practice is what you do on your cushion. So when we're doing a meditation practice, then we understand why we're doing it. For instance, we visualize Chinrezig, we visualize whatever practice we do. So the practices start, there's voidness, and within voidness, everything emerges as Chinrezig or as Tara, and so on. And so we spend an hour being with Chinrezig or being Chinrezig, being Tara. And we know that this is to radically challenge our mind, change our mind, so that our ego, our consciousness stream, the story of me, which has been so solid, we hang it up on a hook for an hour, and we become Chinrezig. It's very, very nice, which is identifying with our Buddha nature, not with our karmic history. So bit by bit, we're doing that because nothing is either real or not real. It is, as we'll see, the Madhyamaka view develops into there is a manifestation like a dream, like a conjurer's illusion. And so we know that by working with Vajrayana visualizations, we are using very powerful methods on all of our identification processes. We're not identifying with me, we're identifying with our pure nature. So in the practice, we apply the middle way. We're not saying everything doesn't exist. We're saying there is existence that manifests, and the way it manifests can become pure. So we see everything through pure eyes rather than karmic eyes, samsaric, corrupted eyes. So that's the view. And then when we come to the conduct, that means what you do off the cushion, in between deep meditation sessions, how we interact with the world, with other people. So there, of course, is through kindness, love, compassion. We want to help. But the middle way means that we realize that the helping is beyond duality, beyond triplicity. So we're like a dreamlike helper in a dreamlike world, doing what needs to be done. But the fact that it's like a dream doesn't devalue it. Because depending on what you do as a dreamlike person in this dreamlike world, you'll get dreamlike results. And that's going to carry on, the dream's going to carry on until you're enlightened, until your mind is liberated. So when we say like a dream, it doesn't take the power out of our compassionate life. On the contrary, the more we understand it's like a dream, the more we understand we can help people by helping them to work with their mind, the whole way they react to things, interpret things. So anyway, the Madhyamaka view, middle way view, comes through in our practice, and then it comes through as a result of on the cushion practice, off the cushion practice, with a very clear and honest and true and valid view of things, we will get the best result, which is to develop along the bodhisattva levels and become Buddha. So in practice, I mean in our own practice, most people don't have the time to really explore these views. How can you say enough? So today I've glossed over, it really is a bird's eye view from high up, generalities. Down on the ground is very different. It's much more extensive, so much more detail, many more things to think of. So our teachers, who are very kind, very practical, like Akon Rinpoche, he would say to somebody, well, don't take things too seriously, which is kind of a wonderful, everyday way of saying apply the Madhyamaka middle way view. You're not saying ignore everything, but don't take yourself too seriously. Don't take things too seriously so they affect you emotionally, or you can't do them anymore, and so on. See it more like a dream. So that's beautiful. Buddha's teaching, our Lama's teachings, just see it more like a dream. Anyone can understand that. It's harder to apply it, but it can make more sense. But then when we explore middle way philosophy, we understand, wow, that's so true. And why use the dream example? What is a dream? Then we explore it, 3-4 levels of what a dream is, and so on. So I think that's how it applies in life. If we apply the Cittamatra view in life, then what we saw today, these 3 levels, we know basically all the time, I'm Buddha, you're Buddha, everything is pure and enlightened, but temporarily, within our illusion, we're in each other's lives through the power of karma. Can't avoid that. But then what we can change is how we react and relate to it, how we tell ourselves the story. So that would be applying Cittamatra main thrust, and that would be very useful too. I don't know if that helps.
Oh, it's a beautiful response, Ken. Thank you so much. A very generous response, and it gives one a lot to contemplate over the next days, weeks, lifetimes. Thank you.
Welcome. Well, maybe that's us for today. So hello to those I didn't say hello to at the beginning, and wishing you all a lovely week. We did the dedication, so go well, and hope to see everybody next Saturday.
Take care, Ken.
Take care.
Oh, very much, Ken.
Right, thank you. Thank you very much, Ken.
Try now. Try
Thanks, Ken.
everyone.